On the wedding night, the husband who went to see someone off mysteriously disappeared. I was anxious to look for it, but inadvertently browsed his childhood circle of friends. The Mid-Autumn Festival reunion night is to tidy up the family. Cheng Yu is still the most filial this year. The picture is a group photo of my husband Lu Chengyu and Qiao Xue's parents. Lu Chengyu didn't even have time to remove the makeup on his face, but the lip prints I kissed at the wedding were wiped clean. Qiao Xue pointed out in the comments section, "Sisters strongly recommend this makeup remover. It can really wipe off anything dirty." I was about to like it, but I saw Lu Chengyu reply in seconds, "Give me the link, and I'll buy one for my mother." My friends broke into the door with a smile. I looked at the time, and it turned out to be the auspicious time for the cave. Several people looked at each other, looked at me, and then looked at the empty pillow beside my bed. I changed my wedding dress and waved my big hand. "What are you doing in a daze?" Lu Chengyu and his Xiaoqingmei's cave. "Let's make trouble together." 1. When I saw Qiao Xue's moments, my fingers were shaking. It turned out that Lu Chengyu could really do this for her. He left me alone on her wedding night and just went to have a Mid-Autumn Festival reunion dinner with Qiao Xue's parents. My best friend saw that I was sad and persuaded me carefully. "Lan, are you all right? Why don't we go? You're tired today. Get up early." I wiped my tears and put on my coat. "Go, why don't you go? How can you watch a good play if you don't go?" The bridesmaids surrounded me with skirts one by one and walked on the road aggressively. The distance from our new home to Qiao Xue's house is only 10 minutes. This was also decided by Lu Chengyu in those years, saying that the location was good and it was convenient to go anywhere. Lan, Qiao Xue has lived in this community for more than 10 years. And the property is very good. Let's just live here. The so-called convenient to go anywhere, but it's just convenient to go to Qiao Xue's house. At that time I was really blind. I couldn't understand Lu Chengyu's imd. It was to take care of Qiao Xue, the so-called non-marriagism, at any time. Qiao Xue's house was very lively. Not only Lu Chengyu, but also Qiao Xue's 7 aunts and 8 aunts were neatly crowded in Qiao Xue's cabin, as if it was their wedding night. I stood at the door and suddenly lost the courage to break in and make trouble. Even if he rushes in, what will Lu Chengyu say? Qiao Xue is unmarried and lonely every New Year's holiday. I'm just here to accompany her and protect her safety. Didn't I tell you that I just have something to do and go out for dinner? Isn't it just to have a meal? Aren't you going back in a moment? Is it so ugly? Qiao Xue's parents also called me. My uncle and aunt are closer to me than my own parents. I can't discredit the old man's face. That's all. After all, I'm going to get a cocoon in my ears. Qiao Xue's house is on the first floor. I can see the scene of the house through the window of the balcony when I stand at the entrance of the stairs. Among the elders there are only 2 young people, Lu Chengyu and Qiao Xue. The 2 of them talked and laughed. Lu Chengyu made Qiao Xue giggle from time to time. Qiao Xue also seemed to have heavy hair on both sides, and her head was always on Lu Chengyu's shoulder. After 3 rounds of drinking, Qiao Xue's father became interested and wanted to pull Lu Chengyu to drink. Lu Chengyu's cheeks were already red, and he stubbornly took the wine glass. Qiao Xue suddenly held Lu Chengyu's hand playfully, put his wine glass in front of him, and took a big sip on Lu Chengyu's hand. After drinking, Qiao Xue seemed to dislike the bad taste of the wine, and her expression exaggerated, which made a lot of people laugh. I clearly saw the unconstrained look in Lu Chengyu's eyes. They are all old bachelors. Why is it still such a low-grade green tea? There is no progress at all. 2. When I kicked the door and went in, Qiao Xue was preparing to do the same trick and snatch Lu Chengyu's cigarette. "Cheng Yu, stop smoking. What on earth does smoking attract you so much? Let me try." I snatched the cigarette and inserted it into the rice in front of Qiao Xue. I don't know if what a man needs most is not a smoker, but a cigarette lighter for him? I haven't learned the essence. Lu Chengyu's eyes were full of Qiao Xue, and my sudden appearance scared him. After a moment, he saw that I had led a large group of people, and the feeling in his eyes dissipated in an instant, and he frowned and stood up. "Lan, what are you doing with such a large group of people? Do you want to make trouble?" He knew that there were only girls behind me, and there was no threat, but he subconsciously protected Qiao Xue, who was shrinking in his arms with his right hand. The atmosphere on the table became subtle. Several relatives looked at me inexplicably, and Qiao Xue's parents showed inexplicable anger on their faces. I sneered and said, "Didn't you eat enough at the wedding during the day? As for sneaking into someone else's house for dinner while making trouble in the cave? I didn't know that I, a wife, starved you on the first day of entry." As soon as this was said, Qiao Xue's relatives began to talk to each other. Is Xiao Yu getting married today? Then it's too bad for the bride that we pulled him to drink for so long. Oh, Xiao Yu didn't say it himself and we didn't know either. What should we do? The newlyweds quarreled because of us on the first day, so we can't be persuaded. Hearing the words, Qiao Xue's father suddenly stood up with a slap on the table. What advice? What's wrong with Xiao Yu going home for a reunion dinner? Outsiders come to the family to make trouble. Is it our Xiao Yu's fault? Qiao Xue's mother took Qiao Xue's hand, and tears fell before she opened her mouth. It's all my fault. Knowing that Xiao Yu has been taken away by outsiders, he still persistently asked Qiao Xue to call him back for dinner. After all, Xiao Yu grew up with us, Qiao Xue. The two of them stick together all day long. We have long regarded him as our son. Little girl, don't blame your aunt. After all, this Mid-Autumn Festival reunion dinner should be eaten by the whole family. Qiao Xue is gone without Xiao Yu. What's the name of the family? What kind of festival is there? Before I could even say a word, Qiao Xue's mother cried and pulled Qiao Xue into Lu Chengyu's arms. It's all my fault. I can't accept the fact that Xiao Yu is married. Xiao Yu, you said you got married. What should we do in the future? What should we Qiao Xue do? We Qiao Xue will have no home from now on. I looked dumbfounded at Qiao's mother crying with a runny nose and tears. When I turned my head, I saw that Lu Chengyu and a group of relatives were also infected. A group of people sobbed silently. Lu Chengyu held Qiao Xue and Qiao's mother in one hand, and took out the other hand to wipe a handful of tears. Auntie, don't worry, you are more close than my own mother. From now on, I will spend the Mid-Autumn Festival with you and Qiao Xue every year. When Qiao Xue heard the words, she looked up from Lu Chengyu's arms and glanced at me inadvertently. The next moment, she shrank into Lu Chengyu's arms as if she had seen some monster. Xiao Yu, don't say that. Your wife is still here. She will be angry again soon. Qiao Xue is indeed much weaker than her mother. Before I came here, I thought that Qiao Xue was the most difficult to deal with, but I didn't expect that their family was hereditary green tea, and there was also Qiao Xue's mother who relied on the old to sell the old. I took a deep breath and looked at the person I had loved for 8 years in front of me. I decided to give him one last chance. 3. Lu Chengyu. Now come home with me to make trouble. The auspicious time is almost over. Qiao Xue suddenly showed a disdainful expression. Is my sister-in-law doing a serious job? Why do you open and close your mouth to make trouble in the cave? I don't know how to be ashamed. That I pretended not to hear it and looked straight at Lu Chengyu. My last patience is exhausted. Seeing that he had almost eaten, Lu Chengyu looked at Qiao Xue and finally stood up and put on his coat. Oh, uncle and aunt. I really have something to do today. I'll come to accompany you next year. Before the words were over, the voice of Qiao Xue's mother crying came. She pushed me away and almost hung her whole body on Lu Chengyu. No permission to leave. Xiao Yu hasn't had a good drink with your uncles yet, and no one is allowed to leave. You became this rakier today. How can you have a position at home in the future? How can you take care of our Qiao Xue? Your uncle and aunt still have a few years to live. What about Qiao Xue when we die? You don't take care of her, so why don't we take her to death together? In the end, Qiao's mother sat on the ground, and her less flexible legs kept pedaling on the floor to pretend to be cute. The scene was very funny. However, a trace of distress flashed in Lu Chengyu's eyes, and he hurriedly squatted down to coax Qiao's mother. Okay, auntie, I'm not leaving. I'll accompany you until dawn today. Don't always say that you will die or not, good boy. After comforting Qiao Xue and her mother for a while, Lu Chengyu turned to me with a straight face. Well, Lan, today is a happy day. It's not a time to lose your temper. You take your friends back first, and I'll be back after dinner. I just calmly repeated. Lu Chengyu, if you don't go home with me, we will divorce. He frowned displeasedly, as if he was not satisfied with my disobedience. Lan, today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. It is the rule set by our ancestors to have a reunion dinner. We can't disrespect the rules. I won't go home tonight. If you want to go back by yourself. I sneered and was so angry that I couldn't speak. The Mid-Autumn Festival reunion dinner was eaten with his family. His own parents were still staying up late to prepare things for his daughter-in-law's door tomorrow, but he himself went to other people's homes to show filial piety. We are divorced, Lu Chengyu. As early as I was on the way, I had thought about getting a divorce. Or earlier, on the day I took the initiative to hold the Mid-Autumn Festival wedding, I had secretly made up my mind. If Lu Chengyu abandons me again for Qiao Xue's invitation, I will divorce this marriage. It's just that when I see this face that I have loved deeply for 8 years again, I can't help but be cheap, wanting to give him a chance, give him another chance. Thanks to the good play that Qiao Xue and her parents performed together today, I completely gave up on Lu Chengyu. Lu Chengyu may be the same as me, until I loved him so much that I didn't believe that I would divorce him at all. He frowned more tightly. Chen Lan, is it necessary for you to say such bad words on the day of the great joy? You are my wife. You should be more thinking about me than pushing me into a dilemma. Perhaps because of the alcohol, he loosened his tie and looked at the food on the table. We are married and my parents are also your parents. The food on the table is cold. Take it to the kitchen to warm up for our parents and sit down to eat together. I looked up in disbelief and couldn't believe what I had just heard. Lu Chengyu didn't drink too much, but his brain was so drunk that he could say such words. I laughed angrily for a moment. I reached out and took a plate to put it on Lu Chengyu's face. 4. When Qiao Xue saw that I obediently picked up the plate and was about to do it, she suddenly sneered. Chenlan, I thought you were so awesome. It turned out to be a dog licker. Her voice was so soft that only I could hear it. I didn't hesitate to change the trajectory in my hand and put a plate of pork belly on Qiao Xue's face. Qiao Xue suddenly exclaimed. Her relatives stood up one after another to stop me. The bridesmaids behind me also rushed up to protect me, and the scene suddenly became a mess. After a period of chaos, Lu Chengyu was the first to take action. He was almost a conditioned reflex. Without hesitation, he grabbed a plate of dishes in his hand and put it on my face. I suddenly felt a dense tingling on my face, and my eyes were so painful that I couldn't open them. When my best friends cleaned up the things on my face, I saw clearly that what Lu Chengyu smashed was a plate of braised fish. Although most of the dirty things on my face were removed, there were many fine and dense fish bones poked into my pores. I was almost in pain as soon as I made an expression. Lu Chengyu also seemed to realize that it was wrong. He quickly took me into his arms and tried to pull out the fish stone on my face with a wet tissue. I took a deep breath with my eyes closed, but I smelled the strong perfume that stayed in Lu Chengyu's chest. The smell of Qiao Xue's perfume. I feel a little sick. Qiao Xue hugged her arms and laughed, as if she saw something funny. She bent down and said ouch ouch a few times before she began to blame Lu Chengyu righteously. Xiao Yu, look, you have stabbed your sister-in-law into a hedgehog. Why are you so careless? Ha 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 ha. Laughing enough, she turned her head sympathetically and handed me a bottle of makeup remover. Sister-in-law, use this makeup remover to clean it up. This makeup remover is easy to use, and it can wash away any dirty things. I must give you the Amway. After all, the lipstick marks you kissed on Xiao Yu's face during the day can be wiped off with it. The dirty things on your face must be wiped off. I said, oh, took the makeup remover, opened it, and poured the whole bottle of makeup remover down Qiao Xue's head. You dirty thing really should be washed, lest you always want to rob other people's husbands. Although I scolded very dirty, Lu Chengyu also knew who was more seriously injured now, and he hid aside and refused to make a sound. Qiao Xue shouted like crazy. Xiao Yu, say something quickly. Lu Chengyu shrank his neck and muttered. Don't quarrel, Lan Lan, I'll take you to the hospital first. I ignored him and threw the bag containing the wedding dress in my hand into Qiao Xue's arms. Don't you like to rob other people's husbands? I'm here to send you a wedding dress. It's not the good time yet. You two hurry up. Only then did Lu Chengyu panic. Lan Lan, what are you talking about? I'll go back with you. We'll go back immediately. I shook my head. Lu Chengyu, I gave you a chance when I got married on the Mid-Autumn Festival. At that time you said that you would accompany me, no matter what happened. Until you quietly came to dinner without saying a word, I gave you a chance to go back with me, and I would pretend that nothing had happened. But how did you do it? Lu Chengyu, you and your green tea Qingmei family, lock it up quickly. I have no blessing. After saying that, I was really tired and didn't want to argue with Lu Chengyu anymore. I turned around and went out. Looking up, a huge wedding photo came into view of the living room. Qiao Xue and Lu Chengyu's wedding photos. My heart suddenly twitched, and I felt that my breathing stopped for a second, and I couldn't move my feet no matter what. It's ridiculous. On the wedding day of my wedding, other women's wedding photos with Lu Chengyu were hung in the living room. Seeing this, the bridesmaids suddenly rushed up with wooden sticks and began to smash in the living room. 5. I was still stunned in place. My best friend had already smashed the huge wedding photo, and even the coffee table and TV cabinet in the living room were smashed to pieces. Qiao Xue suddenly exploded in anger and rushed over and said, Hey, what are you doing? This is my home. Believe it or not, I'll call the police. Qiao Xue's relatives also surrounded her, but no one really dared to stop her. When her best friend heard the words, she looked at Qiao Xue innocently. Bride, what are you talking about? Aren't we making trouble? Groom official, why didn't you inform us when you changed the room? At least I'm catching up. Sisters, come in with me. Let's go to the cave. Several sisters immediately rushed into Qiao Xue's bedroom, and Qiao Xue's room was a mess in an instant. The desks and bedding in the room were smashed to pieces, and the legs of the bed collapsed. While smashing, my best friends kept insulting me. It's a noisy cave room. Run away, kid. Run away, Xiao San. Beat away the shameless bitch. Run away the green tea that you can't find a partner at the age of a lot. Qiao Xue didn't call the police in the end and watched us leave gracefully. She and her relatives knew very well that even if the police came and saw the wedding photos and wedding clothes on the ground, they would only think that they were making trouble. I lay alone in the wedding room, looking at the wedding photos of the bedroom wall and Lu Chengyu, and sighed silently. Even in this wedding photo, my smile is so heartfelt happiness. I stepped forward to take the wedding photo and threw it into the yard outside the window. In the wedding photo at Qiao Xue's house, Lu Chengyu didn't even change his clothes. I remember that day because I was busy with work. I didn't wait for the selection of the wedding photo and had to rush back to the company. I asked Lu Chengyu to give me a ride, but he called a car for me with a smile. Baby, go ahead. I'll stay here to supervise their selection of pictures. I must make you beautiful. That day, Lu Chengyu didn't come home until midnight. I nestled in Lu Chengyu's arms and asked him which photos he had chosen. Lu Chengyu just said vaguely, choose a few photos randomly, and they are all very beautiful. It was not until I saw the wedding photo of Qiao Xue's family with exactly the same costumes, background, and even movements that I understood why Lu Chengyu had to stay in the wedding dress shop that day. He is just waiting for Qiao Xue to come and shoot a new set. I smiled helplessly. How stupid I was to indulge in the long river of love, that I even turned a blind eye to Lu Chengyu's clumsy lies. The sweetness of love that I have always thought is just an illusion woven by Lu Chengyu with lies. My mother-in-law heard the sound of wedding photos being scattered in the yard and ran up to check on me. She felt a little guilty and touched my head without saying anything, just crying. My acquaintance with Lu Chengyu was actually introduced by my mother-in-law. Before my mother-in-law retired, she was my boss. She cooperated with me all the way and helped me a lot. I really can't hate her. My mother-in-law took my hand and said, Lan, I'm sorry for hurting you. I shook my head and said, I don't blame you. It's just Lu Chengyu's fault. The mother-in-law stopped talking for a long time, and finally didn't say anything. I suddenly remembered that the wedding banquet in Lu Chengyu's hometown had not been held yet. Because of my work, it was pushed to a week later. My mother-in-law has always been very concerned about the wedding banquet, and she has been doing it herself from beginning to end. I still remember that my mother-in-law cried silently on the wedding message during the day. The people in the village looked down on me. Now I can proudly take Lan back and tell them how excellent we are. 6. Lu Chengyu's concept of hometown has always been very conservative, believing that women should stay at home and teach their children, and should not go out to work. The relationship between the mother-in-law and father-in-law has always been bad, and the son is not good. The villagers blame all this on the mother-in-law, who is a workaholic. My mother-in-law has been silent. On the wedding night, my husband ran to Qingmei's house for a reunion dinner 39,103. Silently endure the criticism of the villagers. I don't know how long it took, but my mother-in-law still opened her mouth with tears in her eyes. Lan, I know you hate us now, and I also agreed to divorce you and Cheng Yu, but next week. I held my mother-in-law's hand and interrupted her. Don't worry, I must leave the wedding, but I will also go to the wedding banquet next week as promised. My mother-in-law is the nobleman of my life, and I can't let her lose her decency in the village. My mother-in-law suddenly looked up at me with gratitude in her eyes. She muttered, You're right, Lan, I also want to learn from you. The next day when I packed up and moved to the divorce house, I met Lu Chengyu, who was full of alcohol, as soon as I opened the door. He moved his stiff legs and stood up to look at me with a smile. It seemed that he had been waiting at the door all night. Seeing the suitcase in my hand, Lu Chengyu's throat moved slightly and hurriedly grabbed it. Lan, I really know I'm wrong. Will you forgive me? I'll call all my brothers back now. We will make up the cave today, and I will never disappear. I glanced at him and didn't say a word. Anyway, there are not many daily necessities in the wedding room. I don't want these luggage at worst. Lu Chengyu was still muttering. Lan, I also have a hard time. You know, you can't promise others suddenly. You can't do what you promise me, but you can't do what you promised Qiao Xue. You can find an excuse not to go home with me for the spring festival every year, but every year I can't come to Qiao Xue's house for the mid-autumn festival. You can let me stay in an empty bed alone on the wedding night, but you can't make Qiao Xue, who is full of friends at home, feel lonely. If you forget to tell others about my wedding today, you will probably forget to love me tomorrow. It's ridiculous that I have loved such a man for 8 years and followed him wholeheartedly for 8 years. I suddenly felt that the marriage certificate in my hand was very hot. Lu Chengyu, I can't stand it for a day. You can pack up your things and go through the divorce procedures with me. Lu Chengyu was stunned indisbelievably and asked with red eyes for a long time, Are you serious? Perhaps before the alcohol was over, he suddenly kicked the suitcase to the ground and walked back and forth irritably with his head in his arms. Lan, what on earth do you want? I apologized and admitted my mistake. I waited for you at the door all night, but you didn't open the door for me. What on earth do you want me to do? Isn't it fun to blackmail me with divorce at any time when you just got married? Is it interesting for you women to say these words? I looked up and stared at him calmly. Lu Chengyu, think about it carefully with your beast brain. Did I mention breaking up or divorce to you when we quarreled before? Do you think I'm serious this time? Lu Chengyu was stunned. After a long time, he suddenly snatched the marriage certificate in my hand. His expression was a little ferocious. Lan, it took me so much effort to marry you. Do you want to divorce me? There is no Maya. After saying that, he suddenly tore my marriage certificate to pieces. If you don't have a marriage certificate, how do you want to divorce me? I frowned and wondered for a while, and then remembered. Lu Chengyu scored 250 points in the college entrance examination, and he told me not to laugh at him before. It's terrible to be uneducated. I took out my mobile phone to make an appointment for divorce and informed Lu Chengyu. See you at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 o'clock. Lu Chengyu broke the defense and said, let's go. Do you think I dare not? 7. I went back to the small house I rented by myself. The whole house is full of Lu Chengyu's smell. I packed Lu Chengyu's clothes and toiletries and gave them to the old man selling scraps downstairs. Opening the drawer, a lot of love letters overflowed from the drawer. I think there is a reason why I fell in love with Lu Chengyu. At that time he was sincere and enthusiastic. Whenever he looked at me there was light in his eyes. During the internship, Lu Chengyu was still a security guard downstairs, waiting for me to come to work downstairs every day and delivering breakfast to me. Later, I realized that the little security guard downstairs was the son of my leader, and the leader made breakfast every day. After I was with Lu Chengyu was afraid that I would be laughed at, so he took the initiative to resign and began to take the college entrance examination. Every time I go to see him after work, he reads at night in the study like a good student. He looked at me with a smile and his eyes were bright. Lan, when I get my undergraduate diploma, you will no longer be looked down upon. I also smiled. Then remember to propose to me on the day you get the diploma. Lu Chengyu picked me up excitedly. Really? Then will you agree, Lan? I turned my head with a smile and looked arrogant. That depends on your performance. Later, my mother-in-law told me that Lu Chengyu only got more than 200 points because of his high fever, and insisted on the college entrance examination. Later, he kept being laughed at and lost the courage to reread. No matter how Grandma Ren persuaded him, he just said carelessly, it's more than 10,000 yuan a month to be a security guard, a lot. Until Lu Chengyu met me. He was afraid that I would look down on him and that I would be laughed at like him, so he tried his best to reopen the book. In the year he graduated smoothly, I went to school to pick him up. That was the first time I saw Qiao Xue. Qiao Xue stood behind Lu Chengyu and looked at me with a hostile face. Then Lu Chengyu proposed to me, and we hugged each other on the school playground. Lu Chengyu asked several friends to help him put the flower tube. Qiao Xue clumsily took it upside down, and the ribbon collapsed all over her body. From a distance it was shiny. Qiao Xue stared straight at Lu Chengyu and said with a smile, I'm so stupid that I can even take a gift tube. I ruined your marriage proposal. I'm sorry. After so many years, Qiao Xue has really not made any progress. I remember the first time I asked Lu Chengyu who she was. Lu Chengyu put his head on my head and smiled happily. Lan, are you jealous? I'm so happy that you are finally jealous of me. I was diverted by him and mistakenly thought that he didn't care about Qiao Xue at all, so he just ignored it. But I didn't expect Qiao Xue to act so recklessly. Isn't it because of Lu Chengyu's inaction? Saying that Qiao came, Qiao Xue sent a video. She was lying on the big bed in my wedding room, wearing my pajamas, and the folds beside her were obviously the traces of the man who had just got up. Qiao Xue smiled brightly at the camera. Sister-in-law, my house is leaking. Borrow your bed and use it with a man. Oh, look at my brain. You left so suddenly that I forgot that you are no longer my sister-in-law. That's it. Xiao Yu has taken a shower. It's time for me to take a shower. Bye. At the end of the video, Lu Chengyu didn't know what he said to Qiao Xue when he opened the door, which made Qiao Xue giggle. I thought it was boring, so I blacked Zhou Shi with my backhand. Just after cleaning up the love letter in the drawer, the phone of the studio rang again. On the other end of the phone is the sales lady. Last time. Miss Chun, your husband asked us to recustomize the large-size wedding photos 2 days ago. It has been finished. When will you come to pick it up? I smiled bitterly and couldn't even be sure whether the heroine on the wedding photo he remade was me. Get rid of it, don't want it. I hung up the phone and went to clean up the flowers given to me by Lu Chengyu. Since we were together, he has been buying new flowers for my balcony every week. I haven't been home for a long time this time. The flowers on the balcony have withered and rotted, and there are many fine and dense black worms around me. Just like Lu Chengyu, after being washed away by time, he only had a dirty inside. 8. Lu Chengyu may have realized his mistake and put a few bouquets of fresh flowers in front of my house every day. In addition, there is a love letter and a breakfast. All kinds of things are good memories of the past. I think that if I were myself a few years ago, maybe I would just lose my temper and get back on with him. But I touched the position of my heart, and there seemed to be no Lu Chengyu's position there. On the weekend, I kept my promise with my mother-in-law and went back to Lu Chengyu's hometown. As soon as she entered the door, Qiao Xue followed Lu Chengyu to work like her own family. Uncle, here you are. Sit down. I'll get you some fruit. Ah, Aunt Jean, I haven't seen you for a long time. How is your granddaughter doing recently? Uncle, I'll do it. Just take a rest and I will treat Xiao Yu well. I looked around and didn't see my mother-in-law. Lu Chengyu found me first and hurriedly ran over to take my hand and said, Lan Lan, I knew you wouldn't be so cruel to me. Lu Chengyu took care of me and sat on the sofa in the back room and naturally helped me peel oranges. Lan Lan, it's good that you're not angry. We will finish the wedding banquet today and go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to remarry tomorrow. I won't make you angry again. Come on, eat oranges. I didn't intend to open my mouth, but suddenly my sight was blocked by a touch of red. Qiao Xue stretched out her head over me and landed Cheng Yu's hand and bit his peeled orange into his mouth. How do you know that I like oranges? I'm really thirsty after entertaining guests all day. Xiao Yu, you must be the most considerate. Qiao Xue said vaguely for a long time, and exclaimed as if she had just seen me clearly. Ah, Lan Lan is also here, I didn't even notice. I looked at the new Chinese-style red long skirt that Qiao Xue could wear inside. It's so easy to make people misunderstand that they don't let Qiao Xue change her clothes. Lu Chengyu put it on purpose. Seeing that I was looking at Qiao Xue's clothes, Lu Chengyu said with a guilty heart, Lan Lan, listen to my explanation. I'm afraid you really won't come, so let Qiao Xue dress up first and don't lose the face of the Lu family. After saying that, he dragged Qiao Xue to the toilet. What are you waiting for?
Lan Lan is here.
Hurry up and change your clothes. Qiao Xue bit her lip and her eyes turned red, and her eyes were full of murderous intent. I sneered, no need. Now that all the newcomers are here, just take me to the guest seat. Only then did Qiao Xue soften her face and sneered with the corners of her mouth. Okay, then I'll take you there. Lu Chengyu was no longer in the mood to continue entertaining guests and followed me to the banquet. Lan Lan, don't lose your temper. Have you forgotten that we used to have such a good relationship? Why did you make such a fuss because of a Qiao Xue? Qiao Xue has been a good brother with me for so many years. If we really had something, we would have. You have been together for a long time. Is it still my turn to sit here? I took a deep breath and interjected. Lu Chengyu waved his hand in a hurry. No, I didn't mean that. You misinterpreted my meaning, Lan Lan. Bang. Before the words were over, Lu Chengyu was slapped in the face. I looked up and saw my mother-in-law standing aside with scarlet eyes, shaking uncontrollably.
Un filial son.
What kind of evil have I done to give birth to a man like you? The mother-in-law looked like she had just come back from shopping, and the large box of vegetables in her hand was also left aside by her at this moment. Lu Chengyu was stunned and stood still. Qiao Xue stepped on high heels and rushed to stop in front of Lu Chengyu. Auntie, what are you doing? Beating Xiao Yu in front of so many people. Doesn't he want to lose face? Bang. The mother-in-law did not hesitate and slapped Qiao Xue again. 9. You little fox, you were angry with my daughter-in-law and made our family jump. Now you still have the face? I want to ask you, who else wants to lose face? Qiao Xue stiffened her neck and stared back. What's wrong with me? I like the person I like. I don't want him to be lonely. I don't want him to be bullied by other women. Is it wrong? Oh, I hit someone. Come and have a look. The old lady hit someone. I don't know when. Qiao Xue's mother came over with a large group of relatives and began to shout at the door. Qiao Xue kindly came to their house to help. The family bit LV Dongbin and even beat Qiao Xue. What kind of quality? Under the shouting of Qiao Xue's mother, more and more people gathered around the open-air banquet. Qiao Xue's mother protected her daughter distressfully and pointed at me and my mother-in-law. Damn old lady, I'm afraid you're still alive in the Qing dynasty. Is there anyone who is a mother like you? The son's wedding event has to be handled, and he chooses a daughter-in-law by himself. I think you take the money from this woman. When Lu Chengyu heard the words, he quickly waved his hand and said, No, auntie. I fell in love with Lan Lan first, and then my mother helped me get her contact information. When Qiao Xue's mother saw that Lu Chengyu didn't help her speak at all, her eyes widened indisbelievably. Xiao Yu, I regard you as my own son. How dare you refute me? What do I say this for? Isn't it for your freedom and happiness? Didn't you see that Qiao Xue was beaten? Is there any reason left? If there is no way to talk about this matter today, I will keep making trouble. I sneered. Okay, I'll give you one word. You take your family Qiao Xue to apologize to me and my mother-in-law. We will forgive you for this. The villagers watching the play around couldn't sit still. Where did the little doll come from? It speaks so badly. Who tutored you to be so unqualified? What's more, several strong men brought by Qiao Xue's mother picked up the stool in their hands without saying a word. Lu Chengyu hurriedly protected me and my mother-in-law behind him. If you have something to say it well. My mother-in-law held my hand and suddenly turned up her voice. Dear friends, today's wedding banquet was originally for my son and Lan Lan, but because of the girl in front of them, they divorced a few days ago. I want to show face. I don't want everyone to know about the scandal of our family, so I asked Lan Lan to come to the wedding banquet today. As a result, my son still took this little 3 to show off through the market, which hurt Lan Lan again. I'm going to risk my face today, so I'll tell you how this pair of dogmen and women bullied my daughter-in-law. After saying that, my mother-in-law took out a hard disk from her pocket and handed it to me. It happened that the activity area of the village was at the door. There was a curtain on the empty mud, which was originally used to show public welfare movies for the villagers. I found the control computer behind the curtain and plugged in the hard disk. The huge curtain began to play the surveillance of me and Lu Chengyu's wedding room. The video should be a scene from a few days ago, in which Lu Chengyu was drinking alone at home. After a while, Qiao Xue's mother and daughter knocked on the door and came in, followed by Lu Chengyu's father. As soon as several people came, they began to help Lu Chengyu clean up the house, and Qiao Xue carried Lu Chengyu back to the room directly. After a while, the sound of dry firewood came from Lu Chengyu's room. 10. What's more amazing is that in the living room, Qiao Xue's mother and Lu Chengyu's father hugged each other for a while. The two old men took off their clothes shamelessly and hugged each other, and did not forget to chat in their spare time. Now Cheng Yu should agree to marry Qiao Xue. He has slept so many times and can't be irresponsible. Lu Chengyu's father gasped and said absent-mindedly, "If not, I'll talk to Xiao Yu again. It's time to give someone a name." Speaking of this, Lu Chengyu's father's eyebrows softened, put his mouth to Qiao Xue's mother's face and said intimately, "We should also become a family." Qiao Xue has not entered the door. It's too difficult for us to meet. Qiao Xue's mother blushed and buried her head in Lu Chengyu's father's old man's shirt. After a while, the two people's voices were so loud that they covered the inner room. Seeing this, Qiao Xue's mother couldn't help it anymore. She waved her chair and hit the curtain. "Tit off! Turn it off quickly!" The picture turned to the inner room at the right time. The two of them lay naked on the bed, as if they were done. Lu Chengyu had already fallen asleep, and Qiao Xue had been taking selfies in various poses, as if leaving some evidence. Qiao Xue also shouted like crazy, "Fake? It's all pee. I'm going to sue you for spreading rumors." And Lu Chengyu's father had long been silent in the corner, and he didn't dare to show his heir. For a long time Qiao Xue's father suddenly raised the table and smashed it at Qiao Xue's mother. "You shameless man, I'll beat you to death today." Qiao Xue's mother's face suddenly turned colorful. Seeing that Lu Chengyu's father was about to run, she rushed over and grabbed the other's arm. "How dare you leave? We do things together. Even if we are beaten, we have to do it together." The strong men brought by Qiao Xue's mother saw that Qiao Xue's mother was beaten, and also raised stools and wooden sticks to join the melee. Lu Chengyu cared about his father and rushed over to fight a solid iron rod for his father. I suddenly realized and looked at my mother-in-law beside me. No wonder you finally summoned up the courage to speak out today. It turned out that not only me, but also my mother-in-law was suffering from betrayal like me. The yard was in chaos. I helped my mother-in-law to get on the bus back to the city. It is said that on that day, Lu Chengyu had 4 ribs broken to protect his father. And his father and mother-in-law have completed the divorce procedures. His father didn't want a penny because of his guilty heart and ran out of the house. When Lu Chengyu called for medical expenses, my mother-in-law and I were already on the plane to Iceland for vacation. Qiao Xue was chased by the village committee for losing 100,000 yuan for smashing the huge LED curtain in the village. Not only that, but after we left that day, the fool in their village stole the USB flash drive. The village quickly repaired the LED screen and resumed playing public welfare movies. Fools always sneak behind the screen to plug in the USB flash drive and play Qiao Xue's unbearable video when there are many people. Everyone had no choice but to be a fool, and no one was willing to speak for Qiao Xue. Over time they let him go. Not long after, we heard the news that Qiao Xue was crazy. Qiao Xue's mother felt ashamed and married her to the fool, and the fool agreed not to continue playing Qiao Xue's videos. It's just too late. Qiao Xue couldn't stand the pressure of public opinion in the middle of the night, and jumped off the building. Lu Chengyu was also paralyzed for life because he had no money for treatment. At this time, my mother-in-law and I were already watching the aurora. The mother-in-law held the camera with bright eyes like a child. An uncle came over, patted me on the shoulder shyly, and spoke to me in English. Is your mother single? She is so beautiful. I want to get to know her." I looked at my mother-in-law not far away with a smile, but I saw a young handsome man standing beside her, looking at me with a red face. End.